Welcome to the IDFC Capacity Building Initiative for Tracking Green Finance. In this series of 9 videos, you'll learn how IDFC members enhance their green finance tracking efforts. In this sequence, we'll focus on identifying, tracking, and quantifying climate adaptation finance, essential for reducing vulnerability and building resilience against climate change. So, what is adaptation finance? Adaptation finance refers to funding activities aimed at addressing the present and future effects of climate change. These activities might range from standalone projects to specific components within larger initiatives. To ensure that adaptation finance is accurately tracked, the Common Principles Guidelines require you to identify and isolate adaptation-relevant activities across projects. When tracking adaptation finance, we have to pay attention to the context of the project. We cannot simply check if the project matches a list of eligible activities. Instead, we need to fulfill all 3 of the following steps. Step 1. Clearly state the climate vulnerability being addressed with this project by providing evidence of risks in the targeted area or sector. This can be done through a climate risk assessment. Step 2. Show the explicit intent to address that vulnerability. Clearly state that the project aims to reduce the identified risks. Step 3. Establish a direct link. Demonstrate how the project activities will address the climate vulnerability. Let's use an example. You are implementing an upgrading project for a road that has been identified as being at risk from climate change-induced flooding. To address this, enhanced culverts will be integrated into the road design to divert floodwater and ensure that the road will be usable in the event of heavy rainfall. The project appraisal explicitly identifies the vulnerability to flooding due to increasing extreme rainfall, and states that the project is aiming to address this vulnerability to flood risk. Finally, the project describes how the culverts will mitigate the risk of flooding. Once it has been established that your activity contributes to adaptation, you will need to qualify the type of activity in question and determine whether it falls into one of the following 3 categories. Type 1. Adapted activities that manage physical climate risks. They integrate measures to manage physical climate risks and ensure project objectives are realized despite these risks. For instance, upgrading a road to prevent flood damage. Here, adaptation strengthens the project's resilience, but it isn't the main focus. Type 2. Activities with adaptation as a joint objective alongside other objectives. These activities are enabling resilience through the project. For example, using drought-resistant seeds that also boost agricultural productivity. Type 3. Activities that have adaptation as a primary objective, such as building flood defenses or supporting national adaptation planning. If this is not clear enough, you can use the decision tree to categorize the type of activity and quantify the adaptation finance. Ask yourself, is adaptation the primary objective of the project? If it is, then the entire amount can be counted as adaptation finance. If not, is the focus set on adapting the project to identified climate risks? Or is adaptation one of the objectives among other development objectives? In both these cases, only the costs associated to adaptation can be counted. The associated costs of adaptation can be tracked using 2 main approaches. The incremental approach looks at the additional cost of adapting a project compared to a version without climate risks. This approach needs data on the project baseline. In contrast, the proportional approach estimates a percentage based on the share of the total costs of the project that is dedicated to adaptation. And remember to use a conservative approach. It is better to undercount than overcount climate finance in cases where data is unavailable or uncertain. Thank you for watching. Accurate tracking of adaptation finance is crucial for ensuring that funds are effectively directed to climate resilience efforts. We'd love to show you some more examples. Check out the next videos. We'll dive deeper into adaptation finance in 5 key sectors. You can also check out the guidebook for tracking green finance in idfc.org or subscribe to our next workshop on the Common Principles.